Okay, well, of course, Eyes of the Sports World will be on Super Bowl 50 this week. A lot of big sports fans and casual sports fans, maybe who don't keep up with the NFL, all throughout the year, will be watching from San Francisco, or is it Santa Clara, California, I guess, for the 50th Super Bowl. We've got Daily Journal sports editor John Pitts here to break down the matchup a little bit. John, good to have you back on the Memo.
I'll break it up, break it down. I will not break dance, but other than that, we're all good.
Well, good. No, we're all good if we don't have to worry about that. I got that out of the way now. Tell us, I guess, just a little bit about this matchup. I guess it was the two teams that had home field advantage going into the playoffs. Both made it to the Super Bowl. But kind of what are your thoughts about the Denver Broncos and Carolina Panthers?
Well, you've got great storylines there. I think that everybody knows at this point about everybody knows who Peyton Manning is. Even if you're just a casual sports fan, you know Peyton Manning. He's a Manning, for one thing, but he's one of the all-time legendary performers in the NFL. And he's in Denver now after a long career in Indianapolis. At one point, it looked like he was washed up due to injuries, and he had a bunch of surgeries, and now he is a different player. I liked somebody on the radio the other night said he's not the old Peyton Manning. He is an old Peyton Manning.
Right.
But he's still smart and he's still crafty, and there is he's got the kind of team around him that can win Super Bowls. I'm a big believer in defense at the championship level of any sport, and they have a tremendous defense and can run the ball a little bit, and so that's interesting. But there's no way to downplay how well the Carolina Panthers have played. Everybody knows about Cam Newton, the quarterback from Auburn, but that's an excellent roster that they have assembled, and they've been very clever in the moves they've made. They lost their best receiver before the season began, and yet almost went undefeated in the regular season. And they're the overwhelming favorite, I think, not the sentimental favorite, but an overwhelming favorite based on performances coming into this Super Bowl.
I'm, like you, I know it's cliche, the whole defense wins championships, but it seems to kind of carry out more and more. Talking on Peyton Manning, it's kind of interesting with the team around him. You talk about the changes. I mean, there were probably several years in Indianapolis when, because of his team, he fell short because they didn't have as good of a defense, they didn't have as much around him, and now it's almost a team that's carrying him into the championship. It's an interesting story with him too, I guess. I mean, I obviously hadn't said anything. I don't know your feelings. I mean, my thoughts is this could be it. I mean, this could be his last game as he's kind of fading a little bit more. And then there's the HGH controversy that's come out. I don't really know how much people are putting weight into that, but just kind of talk about the Peyton Manning story going into this game.
I think this is the end of the line for him. I think he knows that. I think he would like to go out sort of like John Elway went out in Denver and win another ring. I mean, Peyton Manning only has one Super Bowl ring. His brother Eli has two. I think Peyton would be happy to get two and call it a day. I imagine the cumulative effect of the beatings that he has taken, and frankly, I don't think we know how hurt he has been. I suspect, but I do not know, that the feeling in his throwing hand is not quite what it was at one time. I've heard it said this past week that arm strength and making the throws is not the issue, but it looks like his timing is off. And you don't know if that's just a transient thing. He actually was demoted to reserve at one point this year if he's just not entirely confident. But I suspect we'll see a little bit of the old Peyton Manning this time if he can work some magic. But again, Carolina has been very overwhelming, especially what they made Seattle look really bad in the game that they played. So, and that was a good Seattle team, probably better than Denver in a lot of ways. So, the HGH thing, I never knew what to make of it. It was
that of course, I'll interrupt for people who don't follow every day. Human growth hormone, I guess a performance-enhancing drug that's been linked to his wife.
Right. Well, there was a report from Al Jazeera America about it that made a big splash, but the sourcing always seemed a bit suspect, and I don't know. I mean, if I'd been injured like him, I would have done whatever I could do to get back, and so, we may never know entirely the truth about that, but I look at a guy that uses HGH, I think about Alex Rodriguez or somebody like that, Barry Bonds, and Peyton Manning doesn't look like that. So I have no idea what that was really about. I just think if he was a criminal genius mastermind in this thing, he would not have had it shipped to his home address, even in his wife's name. So I think it's a negligible story.
Talking about the Carolina Panthers more, and you kind of talked about how they've been built, and as a New Orleans Saints fan, I've kind of seen them come up through the years. And last year was a team that I think they ended up 7-9 and had to scramble at the end of the season to get to 7-9, win 4-5 in a row, and then I think they won their first playoff game there at the second round. So they kind of started to get hot in the second half, and then
I think they started to figure out.
Yeah.
I think they started to figure out what they were and who they were, and I think they got more comfortable letting Cam Newton be Cam Newton. I mean, anybody that remembers Auburn's national championship game knows what a force of nature he was at the college level. And I think they found a way to tap into that. And let him be the focal point and let him do that thing. And it is amazing. And inside the 20-yard line, the red zone, as they say, he's devastating. I mean, he can kill you with his legs, and he's become a very efficient thrower inside the red zone where it's more difficult to pass because the defenders are bunched up inside that box more. So he's had a wonderful season. It would be a stunning upset if they don't win, probably win by a couple of touchdowns. But you just never know. The first time there, sometimes you don't know what's going to happen exactly.
This is, of course, Super Bowl 50, and so whatever, it's just a number, but 50 being 50, there's a lot of people that'll be looking back at the history of Super Bowl and how we got to this point. Tell me about some of your Super Bowl memories. What is the first Super Bowl that you remember, and kind of how much have you seen the game change in the years?
Joe Namath in the third Super Bowl is the first. I didn't grow up as a big sports fan as a kid, but he caught everybody's imagination. I was just getting into junior high, and we all understood that he was cool, and that the girls thought he was cool. So everybody kind of paid close attention to that, and of course that was a stunning upset. Frankly, a lot of these Super Bowls have sort of underachieved. I always think about standing and watching in my a house that I was visiting in Nashville when the kick sailed away for the Buffalo Bills and they lost to the Giants. And I think the amazing catches that propel the Giants. I think it's interesting how the same organizations seem to rise and fall back into it. The Giants, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think those things are interesting. The back-to-back Super Bowls for John Elway with Denver when it looked like he was done. Those are all fun. Everybody loved the 1985 Chicago Bears. I still think it's a shame that Walter Payton didn't get to score a touchdown in that game. I think that was.
But the fridge did.
Yeah, that was no good. That was no good, frankly. But those are some memories.
Sure, I grew up in the Joe Montana era, and even as the Saints being in the rival division, I was always a big Joe Montana fan, and used to love those NFL films that they show them on ESPN with Steve Sable.
Right.
And I grew up kind of watching those. And,
it's a serious investment in time now to try to watch all, they'll run all 50 or all 49 Super Bowl hours. I mean, that's a major investment in time now.
Right.
That's much worse than even maybe watching all the Marvel Universe movies at this point.
Star Wars, right.
Yeah, so that's quite a bit. That's more than a marathon there.
A lot of people also watch for the commercials. Do you have a favorite Super Bowl commercial through the years?
I'm the ones that make you weepy, but then by the next year you've forgotten what they were. I don't remember seeing the Apple commercial at the time, but I'm sure that's enduring. The 1984 commercial. it's just fun to see something that surprises you or is fun in some way and isn't excessively weird. The ones that tend to stick with me are the ones that were so weird that you don't remember what the product was. And that's a failure. In advertising, kids, that's a failure. If you spend a lot of money and nobody remembers what it was, it's a failure. And I'm afraid there have been a lot of those.
Yeah, I like the old Bud Bowl games when they'd have those and see what happened. And the Terry Tate office linebacker,
right?
Those were fun. And the Tabasco one where the mosquito explodes.
Oh yeah,
that was a good Louisiana commercial.
Funny is good. I mean, I think there've been some attempts to. Was it Nationwide Insurance last year, the year before, that did the kid that was dead? It was like a ghost kid was talking to you, and that was like, okay,
weird.
Really, you all should have given that a little more thought. Maybe that wasn't the best. I mean, I kind of understood what they were doing, but it was just a little wrong-headed and weird for that day, of the week or for that day of the year. But the commercials, sometimes the commercials are worth sitting and waiting on, and then when you go back to the game, that's when you go get some more dip or whatever, do whatever you need to do, smoke break. But it's like another Christmas. It's like another 4th of July. It's sort of a secular holiday, and it's usually a lot of fun. Unfortunately, I'm almost always here at work. And hardly ever get to sit and watch the thing. Probably the Eli Manning, Tom Brady, the last New England game is the last one I sat home and watched because I was sort of had an assignment for myself that night. So I sat at the kitchen table and watched it in the living room, our house in Corinth. But that's the last one of those. Mostly I'm just sitting here.
Yeah, that of course being one of the better games lately, and I remember, like you said, kind of during the 80s, it seems like it would always be a blowout, and it would the conference championship games would almost be better. I mean, we've had a few more good games lately. Last year being one of them, coming down to the very last play.
Absolutely.
Kind of backing back up to this year's game, we talked about both teams, but kind of what do you see as the key for each, I guess, to be able to win the game?
Well, no terrible mistakes. I mean, I think when Manning was there last time and the snap went over his head to start and it just got things off to a bad way. The first team to score, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it's sort of how each team takes a punch, because each team's going to have to take a punch at some point. And you just sort of see how they respond. Peyton Manning, it's probably got to be flawless and not make any mistakes, not throw the Manning pick six, the interception return for a touchdown. They've got to be able to run the ball a little bit. And Denver's defense has got to hit Cam Newton. I mean, against New England, Denver's defense hit Tom Brady 23 times, but Cam Newton is built like the Incredible Hulk. So we're going to have to hit him and keep hitting him. And yet he's elusive for his size, so that's a challenge. Carolina just kind of needs to be loose, not get overwhelmed by the moment, and do the thing that they do. If they do the thing that they do, they should be fine. But if they get caught up in the moment, get caught up in the hype, come out tight, get themselves behind, then that could be a problem.
Yeah, sure. Picks, I guess, to kind of end it. I mean, like you, I think Carolina is probably the stronger team. Sentimentally, I'll be cheering it as a New Orleanian. I'd love to see Peyton Manning go out with a title, and so that's where my heart will be. But I know it's going to be an uphill battle. I gather you kind of also see Carolina by a couple touchdowns.
Maybe. I will say, I mean, you've got rooting interests here, and I do think, based on what I see, that folks in Northeast Mississippi, a certain number of them are backing the team with the Manning, and that's understandable. But I would point out Carolina's got some rooting interests for you as well. Michael Orr, celebrated from the blind side. He protects Cam Newton's blind side at left tackle. This is his first year in Carolina. A couple of journeyman defensive linemen, Kyle Love from Mississippi State and Mario Addison, who is the first athlete from Northeast Mississippi Community College to appear in a Super Bowl. They are defensive linemen. They've both had pretty good years. And I think their success in Carolina speaks to the smart general managing job that they've done there. Roster assembly. These are guys that have played in other places and didn't necessarily stick. And they found a home there. So if you sort of want that that home state rooting interest, then Carolina's is a nice pick. The problem is a close matchup sometimes does not translate to a close final score because one team gets behind, takes a few risks, and all of a sudden you're down 4 touchdowns. But I do think, and there's another thing that occurs to me, you always have to be wary when in a semifinal, one team really blows somebody out and looks really good, and the other team struggles and doesn't look so good. And that's exactly the situation here.
Yeah.
So what caution I might have about Carolina is that they look so good in winning the NFC Championship, and Denver struggled, and you can't assume that will translate into the Super Bowl game. Close game after the half, and that could go either way.
Yeah, sure.
If Denver can find some things they can do and have some confidence, then that makes them dangerous. Carolina will want to try to get up and stay up and not let them see any daylight to get back.
Yeah, sure. And they've got such a high-powered offense, and again, we've mentioned some of the new Peyton Manning. I don't know how much they can keep up, so I think if they kept it a low-scoring game, is probably what Denver would need to do.
I think they'd be happy if they had to run that kicker out 5 or 6 times like they do. They seem to have quite a bit of confidence in him, but except for a few people, nobody really wants to see a field goal contest. We want touchdowns and big plays and stuff, and so. I just hope it's exciting in some fashion. A good game. We've had some good games, and it'd be nice to have another good one. That will, if it's good, then they'll talk about the game. And if it's not good, they'll talk about other stuff. And I'd rather hear them talk about the game.
Than the left shark.
Right. Or what kind of pants Cam Newton's going to have on after the game or whatever. So,
great. Thanks, John. Appreciate having you.
Enjoyed it.